Welcome to this episode of Athletic Training Chat. We are on with Evan Krening for this episode, and while we do focus a lot on strength and conditioning, Evan was originally an athletic trainer and still is, but worked in the military as an AT and then made the transition over to strength and conditioning, and now very much utilizes both skill sets within his practice. We were fortunate enough to catch up. Evan was up in the Wisconsin area on some training with the crew that he supports, and with that brought him along to help keep them fit, but then also he reached out to a couple of colleagues, and we ultimately connected and got to sit down and talk shop for an hour. So learned a ton. Thought it would be useful to get that on a podcast, so I asked him to be on, and he graciously accepted. So please enjoy this. If you have an interest in the military setting, this is another really interesting one to listen to and check out. As always, we are powered by Mueller Sports Medicine. Thank you to them for supporting the podcast and the profession. As always, check their site for specials, especially on their social media. We found a couple extremely good ones that have been beneficial to us and highly recommend that you do the same. But without further ado, please enjoy this episode. Welcome to this episode of Athletic Training Chat. We are on with Evan Krening, who is currently more strength coach than athletic trainer, but still an athletic trainer, which is obviously the point of this podcast. But we randomly connected. Evan was up in the Wisconsin area on a trip with the military group that he works with. Happened to just reach out to a former colleague of mine who then through random connections, and then soon before you know it, we're hanging out at a Starbucks talking shop for an hour. So asked Evan if he'd be on to talk more about kind of the tactical slash military setting and kind of just everything he's experienced through there. But before we get into all of that, just wanted to turn it over to you to kind of fill in your background and kind of how you got to where you are.
Yeah, so started down the athletic trainer route after high school, being like a student athletic trainer. Worked with my athletic trainer, and that kind of showed me what athletic training was, and I got interested in it because of the broad scope of everything that you had to know and learn. Did my undergrad work at a small school in Colorado called Fort Lewis College in athletic training. Went on, did an internship with Exos, formerly Athletes Performance, grad work at San Jose State in athletic training. Was a GA there as an athletic trainer as well. Then I wanted to kind of complement all that with a little bit more strength and conditioning work, because that had always been a passion for me, kind of going hand in hand. Started doing some internships around the country, Wake Forest, Wyoming, Northern Colorado. While I was at Wake Forest, the crew that I work with now was actually going around just observing some of the schools in North Carolina, predominantly football, but just seeing what they do, seeing what they could glean from that. The coach I worked with there said, you should probably go talk to them, or at least, say hi, try and network. I'm like, oh, okay. Went out, connected with them, thought that was the end of that. And a little later on, I was trying to apply for jobs, tried to apply for a Wounded Warrior Project job. So I hit those guys up to see if they knew anybody. They didn't know anybody, but they said they had an opening, like somehow miraculously right at that exact time. So I flew out 2 days later to do a interview and assessment, and picked me up as an athletic trainer. And I was like, oh geez, well, we'll see how this goes. This kind of weird tactical military setting that I had zero clue on
Sure.
what that entailed or was. But I'm like, I'll get out to North Carolina. I'll do this job for like 6 months to a year, and then I can start looking around at some smaller schools and get back to that traditional setting. And then fell in love with that, and I've been here for 8 years now, and don't really plan on going anywhere. So just a weird twist of fate, I guess.
Funny how that all works out, right?
Yeah. All right.
What were some of the experiences you had, or like just if you could kind of describe your role as the athletic trainer, um, specifically when you started off in that setting?
Yeah. So how athletic trainers work, at least with our unit, we have athletic trainers and we also have physical therapists. And it's nice because you're kind of treated as an equal. You're not, treated as some like a PTA or something.
Sure.
You're there. You're doing all the evaluations. You're doing all the treatments. You may run a whole rehab on your own. Uh, you're very empowered there. So it was a cool kind of new setting feeling. And then because we were all so close with the strength staff and nutrition as well, you didn't have that divide that you normally have in a lot of traditional settings, or whether it's physical or like you may not even see those people. So we were always able to be working very close together because I was sitting right next to the strength coaches, so we could talk about patients. It's the same but different in your patient population. You'll get a lot of similar injuries, I guess. A lot of overuse stuff from just when I first started here. Let me uh, go back. When I first started here, um, a lot of units, it was still very new to have a human performance team at a lot of these units. So a lot of the
Sure.
guys were still getting used to what we had to offer, if they actually trusted us to do anything. So you had a lot of overuse stuff, which guys just not knowing what to do, doing stuff on their own for years. Um, so we were working a lot with that. We had some um, big acute stuff, um, a couple low leg fractures. The first one that uh, really was like, oh, this is completely different. Is we had a guy that was in that had gotten blown up, and so I had to work with him from you know getting him back from overseas and uh, not having any clue what to do, but working hand in hand with me, our head PT, and then uh, the strength and conditioning staff and the dietitian um, to get him back to full return to duty. It's a really, from injury to return to play, it's always really rewarding, but from, you know, almost potentially dying to going back to this job that you've worked years and years to get
Sure.
to, uh, that was like, that was kind of another level of fulfillment or that rewarding feeling. Um, so then you also get like the ankle sprains and stuff that you also have to deal with that are,
Right.
kind of, you get the more rare stuff that would be very common in athletics. But usually it's a little bit more overuse and big acute stuff. So I
Makes
don't know if that
sense.
makes sense.
No, it does. Um, when we met, we were talking how you've pretty much fully shifted your focus to work on the strength and conditioning side. When did that occur? You said you've been there for, 8 years now, and kind of what factors kind of drove that shift over to that side of the human performance team within the unit?
Yeah, I started in because of my background in strength and conditioning. They had me work. I had my own patients and everything, but they also had me do what we called like the bridge person, the
Okay.
bridge program. And so it was kind of um, that bridge between full rehab and full return to duty with the strength coaches. So I had all the injured guys that I was taking through um, workouts that fed off of whatever they were doing in their rehab at the time. Um, and then we would ultimately get them back to return to duty, and I would hand them back off to the strength coaches. So I was kind of doing both the whole time I was here.
Okay.
Um, and then a slot opened up where I could go full time strength. And I could still do what I was doing as far as the bridge stuff, but then I could uh, lean a little bit more into working with the healthy guys. And
Sure.
I wanted to, a challenge, and it's always been pretty fun for me. So as soon as that slot opened up, I slid over to that, and that was about 4 or 5 years ago now. Yeah. So
How is your background as an AT complemented your work in the strength and conditioning now? Obviously, in that bridge program makes a ton of sense on how both sides of those would be really useful. But now, as you mentioned, working more, with the healthy and maybe in quotes healthy, but healthy, um, group. How have you still utilized some of those skills you have as an AT, to focus on A, keeping them healthy, but B, increasing performance?
so I think like it starts off with me being able to speak the language of both sides.
Okay.
Um, so when we are in meetings, we'll have meetings about all the guys that are injured monthly. Um, with command teams so that I understand everything that's going on, and being able to speak that language lets me if anybody has questions, they don't have to go directly to them. I can also just it also helps on our end as strength coaches, that kind of injury preventative model is big and something I always try and push in my programs. You do see a lot of the same injuries, like I said, with the overuse stuff, with our shoulders, neck stuff, low backs, being able to understand mechanisms, corrective exercises, if you want to call them, to help prevent that stuff, or help take some of the load off the um, sports med staff's plate. Anytime I can do that, I try to. It ultimately help everybody in the long run, right? And then
Sure.
um, it's it also helps me if I do see stuff when the sports med staff isn't around. I can relay things back to them a little bit easier, and they trust
Sure.
me um, to see that and understand that. And I try and I still we do some internal education stuff, so I still try and get in on all that, whether we're doing diagnostic ultrasound stuff or whatever. Um, I try not to lose all those skills too.
That's fair. When it
Yeah.
comes to your training and the strength, oh, sorry, do you have more?
Nope.
Okay. To the strength and conditioning and kind of the programming uh, aspect of it all, I think we talked about this a little bit when we were together, but there's not necessarily athletics can be nice because there's very defined seasons for the most part. The NCAA is currently making that a little harder, but I digress. But within this realm, and like even talking about the firefighters, like there is no real on season, off season. You never know what's going to actually, be demanded of them. And so programming can be a little more confusing or trying to A, get those adaptations, but B, also not crush people under the weight of their workouts when they need to go and do that. How have you approached that or kind of the group philosophy to continue to focus on performance while at the same time making sure they're ready if that something were to happen that they need to be ready for?
Yeah, you're right. There's no traditional athletics. You have that like linear periodization model that you can, build up to the season very easily. And we were more or less always in season. So we try and take the approach of um, when guys are on heavy training cycles where they're going to be going on training trips a lot, we'll make those more uh, our higher volume kind of. Those are where we're going to work a lot on the corrective exercise stuff that they get from the PTs and ATs to um, build all that foundation, because they're probably not going to have a lot of time and they're probably not going to have a lot of access to equipment. So if they're just in a hotel gym, it's going to be easier to knock out those kind of workouts. Um, when they are back home more or whatever, then that's when we can kind of uh, push kind of heavier weights, do a little bit more strength and power stuff. Um, we we run we call it speed school, but speed and agility and work capacity kind of classes twice a week. So we're getting in and out of the weight room. We're not just lifting heavy weights as slow as we can. I will also, with a lot of our guys, I'll train kind of concurrently. So I'll have them training, um, you know, all your traits at once, trying to do some kind of dynamic effort movement, lifting a little heavier for a max effort type movement, and then all of our auxiliary stuff to try and get in all the injury preventative stuff, um, all within one workout, so that we're not going to have the adaptations that you would get over this long period. But if we can be good at everything for their for the year, throughout the year, throughout their career, then we're doing okay. It's really hard, like I said, with our guys. Sometimes our guys are gone up to 300 days out of the year.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, so remote programming was a big thing. We started using Bridge Athletic, which is kind of an
Yep.
online platform. That was huge, way better than trying to send out Excel sheets and then having to explain each workout or each exercise to them. So that remote programming piece is also big, which is really hard to do as uh, a strength coach or an AT, because we're so used to being able to be there and correct things on the spot. And now you just have to hope for the best. Luckily, I worked really hard on getting buy-in with my guys, so they feel comfortable reaching out to me whenever for questions and um, send me videos or whatever for feedback. Uh, it's yeah, it's just something I had to develop since I got here, as far as like kind of my methodology.
I can believe that.
Yeah.
One thing we talked a lot about when we got together was just technology, some different things that are out there. Obviously, there's a lot of technology out there, but a couple studies that we both kind of loosely we're connected with in some different ways. But uh, what if technology have you guys brought into this setting and found most useful? And then how have you balanced using it and not just having it to have it? Because obviously, if you measure something, it means you should probably do something with it, but not just taking numbers to get numbers.
Yeah. When I first got here, we had every piece of wearable under the sun, and we were just collecting data to, and then I didn't know what happened to it. So, um, guys were kind of getting fed up with like, um, what was it called? The Omega Wave. We
Yep.
did, uh, we did some, what was the other one we did? Zephyr was
Yep.
another thing. Just we did a lot of work to get nothing out of it. And when we had a staff change, we got together and we're like, okay, let's take everything away and start from scratch. What do we actually need to do this that we can, that is as low impact on the guys as possible? Because they have enough going on. They don't need to worry about setting up all this extra equipment just to be able to get an hour workout in, you know?
Sure.
Um, so we paired it way back to if guys want to use it, they don't all have to use it. But for me, I try and push some bar speed training, some velocity based stuff. So we use a unit, Gym Aware. It's the Gym Aware software, but it's the Flex Stronger unit, which is just a device that magnets to the end of a barbell, and it uses a laser to track um, uh, bar speed. So that for me is extremely beneficial with our guys, because we can't take into account the tactical load, if you want to call it, that they get from their other training. All I know is what they're doing in the gym. So if they go and they have a long training the night before, and then they try and come in and lift 85% of whatever their back squat's supposed to be, 85% isn't actually 85% that day. So using speed instead of a prescribed speed instead of a prescribed weight has been awesome to account for all that outside load. It's been a big education thing for guys to understand, like it's okay for the weight to be lighter than you think it needs to be. Um, but anytime we can auto regulate our guys, I think that's the biggest thing, is auto regulation, taking into account all their outside stressors, whether it's their family, training, nutrition, whatever.
Hmm.
Has been key. We also use a HRV unit. We'll use the Morpheus straps from Joel Jameson, just to get a morning recovery score. It's their recovery score, Morpheus's recovery score, but we'll use it because it allows to adjust heart rate zones day to day. So just another way that we can auto regulate things for guys. Um, we've brought in the Aura rings as well, as you and I talked about. We mainly use it for this kind of sleep tracking,
Yep.
because our guys' sleep is crap, and it's more awareness than anything for them to see, you know, what their sleep looks like with the habits that they have, and if they change things around, how that gets affected. So really, those are the three pieces. And I guess the bridge
Yeah,
athletic stuff,
for
just to
sure.
get programs out to guys. But other than that, that's all like I want to use. Anything more than that's like too much.
Going back to the speed training and how you utilize that, if you don't mind, if we just dive a little bit into it, we don't have to get into all the nuances of it. But as you were talking about that, 85% might not be 85%, so you're setting, and I have we'll call it surface level, if that, knowledge of it, haven't really used it, but paid attention to it. So you've got a certain threshold of speed they should be able to move the bar, and maybe that does that differ based on the set rep scheme, or is it kind of fixed? And then if they start going slower than that, we're potentially overloading them with that amount of weight that they currently have. So I don't know if that's even correct at all, but if you wouldn't mind explaining it,
Yeah.
just kind of at that level, just to kind of give context would be awesome.
Yeah, there's different ways to do it based on what your goals are. So we'll say we're working on kind of a strength phase or whatever. I'll give somebody a speed. I'll say let's be at point 0.6 for 3 sets of 5. Um, they'll start adding weight until that speed, because lighter weight's going to be faster than 0.6.
Yep.
Heavier is going to be slower. We'll keep adding weight till they kind of average around that 0.6. They'll hit their working sets, but within those working sets, if I notice their speed starting to tank, we'll either cut the set or we'll start dropping weight, because obviously they're getting early fatigued,
Yep.
and we're not getting out of it what we need to get out of it. The other thing we can do is, if we're working more like a hypertrophy type phase, we can do what's called a percent drop. So we'll have them start doing reps, and they're going to keep going until they get like we'll say 10 to 20% of their fastest rep drop. So if their fastest rep was 1.0, they're going to keep going until they drop below 0.8. And as soon as they drop below 0.8, we'll cut the set.
Okay.
Um, it's we need to keep it like as easy for them to understand as possible. Otherwise, it's again, they won't buy in because they don't have time to deal with it.
Sure.
But that's seemed to have been pretty easy to digest for them. I don't know if that any of that makes sense, but
No, that helps just to kind of give the basis of it, because I've seen a lot of it out there. Never dove into it. We just never had the resources where I've been to like truly utilize it. Um, in terms of just too many people and not enough technology in order to do it. So
yeah. And there's been a bunch of research. Brian Mann's done a bunch where
yep.
you can correlate a speed back to a percent 1 RM.
Yep. I've seen
So
that.
you could theoretically get a 1 rep max from sub max loads. You could predict a 1 rep max from sub max
Yep.
loads. We don't do much of that. We'll just kind of stick in those velocity ranges though.
Makes sense. Well, anything else around your role and the tactical setting that you'd like to talk about that we haven't covered?
I think we could talk about kind of how the um, our whole HPO structure is set.
I think that would be perfect if
So
you'd like to get into that.
yeah, so um, for us specifically, how our whole team, our whole human performance optimization team is structured is we'll have 3 pillars that'll be our med staff, our, our psych staff, and then um, us. Med will be all of our medics, docs, PAs. Psychs, we have operational psychs, clinical psychs, uh, licensed clinical social workers, and then us, which is nutrition. Oh, we also have a sports psych. Then we have dietitians, sports med physician, PTs, athletic trainers, strength coaches. Um, we're all those 3 pillars are constantly working together. So you have that guy, because a guy could get injured, uh, injured out on training. Medical staff sees him initially. Then we start working with him for rehab. but he's also seeing psychology to help with everything else going on in life and working through that injury, passing him off to the strength staff, getting him back to return to duty. So it's a very, very unique situation where you have, man, I think we have, I think around 50 different people under HPO right now.
Wow.
Um, but it's really cool to have all these specialties that you could talk to at any time about anything. And you can learn so much so that
Sure.
it's helped me become better all around. Um, like talking with the psych professionals and kind of gleaning some what do you want to call it, tips, tricks on how to talk to people, because when we're in the weight room, we're the bartenders,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, guys coming to us telling us all their problems with their families or whatever's going on with work and all this, and you got to be able to, like, you know be a uh, be an advocate and uh, be able to synthesize and give some kind of advice back. uh,
Right. I'm
it's
with you.
it's a very unique situation.
I
um,
can imagine some of the things that you guys get to hear during those workouts.
yeah. Very different from a football weight room.
I can imagine that. Well, if you're ready for them, we can jump into the athletic training track questions.
Sure.
So, first one is, where do you see athletic training going in the next 5 to 10 years? And you can talk broadly, or if you want to talk in a specific example, whatever, wherever route you want to go.
I'll be very specific to my situation, because I've
Perfect.
been seeing it as uh, getting athletic trainers outside of that typical setting into these specific tactical fields, whether it's fire, law enforcement, military. Um, it's grown really, really fast, specifically the H2F program with the Army,
Yep.
who's getting all these specialties in with each of the units. Uh, I really hope that it just keeps growing. I think that our our military deserves to have all the uh, same thing that these athletics departments have, all the same resources. So I I don't see that changing. I only see it growing.
Sure.
It's been pretty exciting to see, going to different, like the tactical strength and conditioning conference, and seeing it grow and grow every year. I hope, I'd like to see more on the athletic training side, in that specific sector. So I only see that increasing over the next 5 to 10, like you said.
I believe that. What advice would you give yourself as a young athletic trainer? And if you could go back and say when you would have given yourself that advice.
uh, I think so. The athletic training program I grew up in was that very old school. We're gonna be here all day long, every day. If anybody
Sure.
needs anything, and it was, I think it's learning that there can be this kind of division, that where you can have a work life balance, where you can, you're not pigeonholing yourself into like a certain career, to a certain, not career, a certain field, like, oh man, I can only work college athletics, and outside of that, like, it's not worth doing. There's way more out there. um, Being able to being able to set, this is the biggest one, being able to set boundaries with
Sure.
you and your patients or athletes um, is huge. When I first started, I was like, yep, call me whenever, whatever comes up. And I found myself anytime my phone would buzz with a text message or something, like my stomach just dropped. I'm like, oh man, what is it now? It's a Saturday night and I actually have the next day off for once. But setting boundaries and being okay with it'll get handled on Monday or whatever,
Yep.
I think would be huge.
Wish I would have learned that lesson as well. What has been the most influential resource you found in your career?
Honestly, like we were talking about, being in this HPO construct has been the
Yeah.
biggest thing, where stuff I never would have learned, never would have had access to. Now I'm learning about EEGs and um, biofeedback and some stuff we're doing, different uh, say different procedures and stuff that you can do like in the field with stuff,
Yep.
on the medical side of things. It's I I feel very blessed to be able to be in that situation and have peers that have been able to, that have been so like welcoming and teaching you stuff and experiencing things, so that I can then advocate their services to our guys, because I understand it, and I've um, been able to make maybe benefit from it too. So
So, yeah, the power of a good team when everybody can work together is pretty impressive. You
right.
may oh, you may have already actually kind of answered this one in a previous one, but we'll ask it anyway. As an AT in your role, how do you take care of yourself?
Like I said, yeah, setting boundaries. uh, um, Making sure I actually go and get workouts in was big. That like started to fall off for me, especially through grad school and stuff where I was not taking care of myself, and Taco Bell was my best friend, and it was
Huh?
it was getting bad. So taking that time for yourself, because you only be better at your job if you're feeling great.
Sure.
And um, so
Yeah, that's a hard lesson to learn and one I keep dealing with myself.
oh my
Um,
gosh,
if,
yeah.
if you could change or eliminate one thing, it could be a modality, a common practice, a specific mindset in the field of athletic training. What would it be? Or if you want to
I
say for
think
strength and conditioning as well, I'll leave that up to you.
I'll say right now, the staff that I work with are PTs, ATs, sports med doc right now. Exemplify the thing that I hope everybody can do, which is to get away from that very conservative mindset of somebody's injured, they're just going to be with us doing rehab stuff, and they can't. You'll get them back whenever we're done with all this.
Sure.
Um, right now, when we get our PTs, ATs are like, all right, start loading this guy as quick as we can, um, in a safe manner. Don't just uh, don't just let all this go away while we're trying to get through this initial rehab process. When we get guys post surgery, it'll be they're injured. If we have time, we'll start working with them now. Then they'll get surgery. After surgery, we will go to their house for home visits. We'll do workouts there if they're able to. They'll get treatment there. As soon as they're able to, really, as soon as they're able to drive to get to get to the facility, they'll be spending 2 to 3 hours between sports med and us, and it never gives them that time to kind of think about them being pulled away from their team or whatever, because they're getting better. They still feel useful, for lack of a better word.
Mhm.
Uh, and it's yeah, I forgot where I was going.
No worries. No worries. Last question. What does being an athletic trainer mean to you?
I think I still am very proud, even though I'm not working as an athletic trainer. I still consider myself an athletic trainer. I'm very proud of what the profession entails. Everything you have to learn, everything you have to do, the hours you put in to just be able to do this job that is usually thankless. It's Hopefully it's rewarding for people, but it's a very admirable profession to be in, knowing that you just want to be able to help people um, in some, like, usually pretty bad circumstances, um, while you're sacrificing a lot of yourself. Um, Something that I think a lot of people getting in the profession might not completely understand.
Sure. I get that. Well, with that, if people wanted to reach out to you, connect with you, follow you, what's the best place for them to do that? And we'll link this all up on the episode page.
You can hit me up. My business, my outside business, is Sharpened by Iron. So I'm at Sharpened by Iron on Instagram. You can email me at Evan at sbistrength.com. Website is under construction, so that's where we're at right now.
Very nice. I'll definitely check that out. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to kind of talk about the studying. It was good to connect again after seeing you a little while ago, and look forward to potentially connecting again at the future, hopefully at a TSAC conference, or if some more AT stuff ever gets going with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hope you enjoyed this episode with Evan talking about military training and care. I took a lot away from it, especially to look into some velocity training and just get a better understanding about that. Hopefully, if this is something that you're interested in this setting, it gave you just a different glimpse of how you can utilize your athletic training and or your strength and conditioning skills to help you get into that, as from things I've seen out on social media and around the way, they are looking for more athletic trainers, so be sure to check that out. Thank you again to Mueller Sports Medicine for supporting the podcast. If you're interested in journaling and want to give something a try, we have the Athletic Training Daily Journal, which isn't only about athletic training. We do have a lot of practice-based stuff in that because we think that's important, but we talk about leadership, management, communication, just some reflections, some cognitive biases. If that's of interest to you, you can check it out for 14 days with a downloadable sample at clinicallypress.org/shop. No payment info required, or if you want to just jump right in, check it out on Amazon under Athletic Training Daily Journal. Thank you again for listening. We truly appreciate it. We'll be back with you next episode.